The Belgian Malinois came around the corner at full speed, and Agnes Whitfield never saw him coming. 73 years old and barely 5 feet tall, she went down hard, her old brown suitcase sliding away across the polished tile. She pressed a shaking palm against the cold floor of Memphis International Airport and screamed the only truth she had. "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." Before we go on, tell us in the comments what part of the world you're listening from and hit subscribe so you don't miss stories like this one. Officer James Corbett was already running before he heard the scream. He had felt the leash go slack in his hand a split second before Duke launched. That tiny drop of tension that told him, after 4 years working together, that the dog had locked onto something and was about to move. But by the time his boots hit that stretch of tile near Gate B11, Duke had already knocked the small woman flat, and the sound that came out of her wasn't anger. It was terror, the kind of terror a person doesn't fake. James dropped to his knees beside her. Ma'am, look at me. You're all right. You're all right." Her whole body was trembling under the thin cardigan. She couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds. Her silver hair had come loose from the small pin at the back of her head and hung across her cheek. She was still trying to push herself up on hands that couldn't hold her weight. "I didn't do anything," she kept saying. "I didn't do anything, I promise, oh Lord, I didn't do anything." "Nobody said you did. Just breathe with me. Slow. There you go." Around them, the terminal had stopped moving. Rolling suitcases had gone still. A little boy near the water fountain had wrapped both arms around his mother's leg and buried his face in her jeans. Somewhere down toward the pretzel stand, a phone had come up and was already recording. James saw it out of the corner of his eye and pushed it out of his mind. "My name is James," he said, softer now. "I'm with the K9 unit here at the airport. What's your name, ma'am?" She looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were the pale blue of a sky washed thin. "Agnes," she whispered. "Agnes Whitfield. Agnes, I need you to sit up, nice and easy. Can you feel your legs?" "I can feel them. He didn't bite me." "He didn't bite me, did he?" "No, ma'am, he wouldn't. He wouldn't ever bite you." She sat up slowly, and James kept one hand under her elbow. She turned her head and found the dog, and her whole body flinched. Duke was sitting 6 feet away from her, next to the brown suitcase she had lost when she fell. His ears were bolt upright. His body was as still as if it had been carved. His eyes were fixed on James, not on her, not on anyone else in that whole terminal. Just on James. Agnes gripped James's forearm with a hand that was small and cold and unexpectedly strong. "I'm going to Atlanta," she said. "I'm going to meet my granddaughter for the very first time. Her name is Ruby. She was born 9 days ago. My daughter called me. My daughter called me after 7 years, and she said, 'Mama, come. My flight is in less than an hour. Please, I saved for 4 months. Please, mister, I didn't do anything.'" The words came out in one long, uneven breath. Something moved in James's chest that he would think about later, sitting alone in his truck. Right then, he only nodded and told her to keep breathing. Then Duke barked, one sharp, deep, single bark, and he did not move a muscle otherwise. He was pointing at the suitcase the way a compass points at north. James felt the whole room hold its breath. He had worked with Duke for 4 years. He knew every sound that dog made. That single bark from that posture, in that stillness, was not a warning to a person. It was a call to a handler. It meant, "I have something." It meant, "Do not move me from this spot." James swallowed and looked back at the small woman in the cardigan. "Agnes," he said, and he tried to keep his voice as gentle as he could. "I need you to come with me for just a minute. Somewhere quieter." "My suitcase," she said. "I need my suitcase. My daughter got me a little dress for the baby, and I have a picture of my husband. He never got to see her. He passed last spring." James lowered his eyes for a moment. He nodded slowly. "We'll bring your suitcase, ma'am. We'll bring it with us." He glanced at Duke and lifted his chin the smallest amount. Duke rose, walked those 6 feet in 2 smooth strides, closed his teeth around the leather handle of the old brown suitcase, and pulled it 2 feet across the tile. He did not tear at it. He did not shake it. He simply carried it the way he had been trained to carry evidence that a handler had marked for retention. Agnes made a small sound in her throat. "That's mine," she whispered. "I know it is, Mom. Please don't take it." "We're not taking it. We're going to look at it, and then you're going to catch your flight, all right?" She nodded because there was nothing else to do. James helped her stand. Her knees held. He put his hand under her elbow again and walked her past the row of blue seats and the woman still holding her son and the phone still recording. She did not look at any of it. Her eyes were on her suitcase the whole way. The curtained-off area was really just an alcove off the main corridor, set aside for private searches and medical events. There was a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 plastic chairs, and a small camera in the upper corner that blinked a slow red. 2 other agents were already waiting when James led Agnes in. One was a woman named Callie Reeves, whom he had known since the academy. The other was a younger man named Trent, who had transferred in from Miami a month ago and still looked at the K9 unit like it was some kind of magic trick. Callie lifted her chin at James. "What do we have?" "He alerted," James said. He did not say Duke's name in front of the woman. It felt wrong somehow, like introducing an executioner. "The bag." Callie's eyes moved to Agnes and softened by a fraction, the way a person's face does when they are trying to be professional and also trying to be human at the same time. "Ma'am, please have a seat. My name is Agent Reeves. Nobody is under arrest right now. We're going to open your bag and take a look, and if everything checks out, you're going to be on your way. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes," Agnes whispered. "Do you have any weapons on your person? Any medications we should know about? I have a bottle of pills for my blood pressure. It's in the small pocket on the front. That's the only medicine I take. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't take anything." "That's fine, ma'am. Please sit down." Agnes sat. Her hands folded themselves in her lap the way hands do in church. She kept her back very straight. James had time to notice, for the first time, that her shoes were an old pair of white sneakers with the laces double-knotted, and that the hem of her dress was a little longer on one side than the other, as if she had adjusted it herself with an unsteady hand. Callie unzipped the suitcase. The first thing on top was a folded pink blanket, a knitted one edged in white ribbon, the kind an older woman spends weeks on and then wraps in tissue paper before putting it in the bag. Under the blanket was a small white dress with tiny yellow flowers embroidered along the collar, still with the store tag hanging off the sleeve. Under the dress was a photograph in a wooden frame. A man in his 60s in a fishing hat, standing on a small wooden dock, holding up a stringer of bass and grinning under a moustache that was almost entirely white. Agnes made a soft sound. James looked away. Under the photograph were folded clothes, a nightgown, 2 blouses, a spare cardigan the color of old moss, a pair of black slacks. Under the clothes was a plastic bag with slippers and a small bottle of lavender lotion. Under the plastic bag was the pill bottle Agnes had mentioned, and under the pill bottle was the flat bottom of the suitcase. Callie ran her fingers along the seam. She looked up at Trent. Trent handed her a small folding tool. Callie tugged. The bottom lifted, hinged on a strip of stitched vinyl. Underneath were 3 tightly wrapped packages, sealed in layer after layer of black electrical tape and clear plastic wrap. Their shape was rectangular and dense. Their weight, when Callie lifted one, was heavier than it looked. Trent whistled between his teeth, low and slow. Callie set the package down on the table. Agnes had not moved. She had not spoken. She was staring at the packages the way a person stares at something they are absolutely certain does not belong to them, and yet cannot explain how it got in front of them. Her face had gone the color of paper. "Mom," Callie said quietly, "I need you to tell me what these are." "I don't know," Agnes said. "Are these yours?" "No." "Do you know how they got in your bag?" "No." "Have you allowed anyone else to pack this suitcase, use this suitcase, borrow this suitcase in the last week?" "No. No, ma'am. It's just me at the house. Just me." Callie glanced at James. James was watching Agnes, not her mouth, not her hands. He was watching her eyes. Callie tried again. "Ma'am, I want you to know that this is the best moment for you to tell us the truth. If someone asked you to carry these, a friend, a neighbor, a nephew, right now, in this moment, that is a very different situation than if you knew what they were. Do you understand?" Agnes looked up at her. Her chin trembled, but her voice did not. "Ma'am," she said, "I would never carry a thing I did not know. I am 73 years old. I raised my daughter alone after her father shipped out. My husband was a United States Marine. I have never in my life put my hand on a thing that was not mine. I don't know what those are. I don't know how they got there. I want to see my granddaughter." The room went quiet. Trent looked at Callie. Callie looked at James. James looked at Agnes for a long second, and then he turned his head and looked at Duke, who was sitting flat on the tile beside the table, watching him. "I want to see the footage," James said. "The last 30 minutes. Every camera she was near." Callie hesitated. "James, I want to see it." Trent stepped out to make the call. Callie stayed with Agnes. James stood by the doorway with one hand on the curtain and the other on the leash and tried to slow his own breathing. 4 years with Duke, 4 years, and he had never once seen the dog alert on a bag that turned out to belong to nobody. Duke was almost never wrong, but he also was not a lie detector. He was trained to find a substance, not a person's intent. He did not know that this bag had been sitting in a widow's living room a few hours ago while she zipped a knitted blanket into it. He only knew what he could smell now. James had seen mistakes before. He had seen a truck driver caught with a load he had never opened and never known about, sent up the river anyway because a jury did not like the shape of him. He had seen a mother who had let her son borrow the car just for the weekend, just to go camping, sitting in an interview room a week later, trying to explain something she had no way to explain. He had learned very early in this job that what a dog finds is only the first sentence of a story. The rest of the story is the handler's job. He looked at Agnes, sitting there with her hands folded, and he could not make her fit into any of the stories he had ever seen a courier tell. Trent came back through the curtain. "They're pulling it now. 10 minutes. 10 minutes is too long. Her flight board's in 45. Callie held up a hand. "James, that's not our call, and you know it." "It is our call. If this bag was switched, we've got a courier in this terminal right now. He isn't going to sit at that gate forever." Callie's jaw tightened. She looked at Agnes. Agnes had not moved. "Get me the footage," Callie said to Trent. "Skip the paperwork. I'll sign whatever they want later." Trent left again. Callie sat down across from Agnes. She lowered her voice. "Ma'am, may I ask you something?" "Yes." "Where did you check that suitcase?" Agnes blinked. "I didn't check it. It fits under the seat. I never let it out of my sight." Callie glanced at James. "You never let it out of your sight." "Not once. It has my husband's picture in it." "Where did you set it down between the front door of the airport and here?" Agnes thought. "By the counter, when the lady handed me my boarding paper. I bent down to look for my identification, and I set the suitcase between my ankles." "How about after that?" "By the belt, the security line. They made me put it up on the belt so it could go through the machine, but I picked it up right away on the other side." "And after that?" "I sat down by a gate that was not mine. My knees were tired. I sat and I watched the planes come in through the big window." "Anyone sit near you?" Agnes hesitated. A young mother with a stroller sat down on my left for a little while. A young man in a grey jacket sat down on my right. He sat there maybe 2 minutes, and then he got up again. James felt something small and cold move in his chest. "Where did you go from there, Mum?" "To the little store to buy a bottle of water. I set the suitcase between my ankles at the counter." "How about between the store and here?" "I walked. I don't remember stopping. Then the dog." Her voice broke a little. "Then the dog ran into me." James stepped back through the curtain and pulled his radio off his shoulder. "Trent, focus the pull. Ticketing. Front of the terminal. Also that seating area outside of gate B9. Pull all of it." Trent's voice crackled back. "Copy. Just got the ticketing feed up. What am I looking for?" "Small older woman, silver hair, brown cardigan, brown suitcase. She's easy to spot." He came back through the curtain. Agnes had turned in her chair and was looking straight at him. She looked less scared now. She looked exhausted. "Officer," she said, "how long is this going to take?" "I don't know, Ma'am. Not any longer than it has to. My daughter is at the Atlanta airport waiting for me. She won't know what to do if I don't come off that plane. She has the baby with her. My son-in-law works nights and he's asleep. It's just her. It's just her and Ruby. Please." James's throat worked. He did not answer because he did not have an answer to give. The little red light in the corner of the ceiling blinked. Somewhere in the terminal, a boarding announcement rolled through the speakers, distant and muffled by the curtain. Trent came in with a tablet. His face was grim. He turned the screen so Callie and James could both see it, but he angled it away from Agnes without being obvious about it. The footage showed the seating area outside gate B9. Agnes was sitting on a bench, her suitcase between her feet, her hands folded in her lap. The video was black and white, but her posture was so distinct that there was no mistaking her. A young man in a grey jacket walked into frame from the right. He was maybe 30, baseball cap, dark jeans. A brown suitcase that matched Agnes's almost exactly, same size, same color, same rounded corners, same slightly worn look. He sat down on the bench beside her. He did not look at her. He did not put his suitcase between his own feet. He set it down between him and Agnes, so close to her suitcase that the two of them touched. He sat there for exactly 1 minute and 42 seconds. He looked at his phone. He looked at the departure board. He did not look at Agnes. Then a woman with a stroller came up the aisle from the other direction. The stroller was oversized, one of the double ones. As it passed the bench, the stroller's back wheel caught on the edge of Agnes's suitcase, and Agnes leaned down to move it. The woman with the stroller stopped and apologized. Agnes waved a hand. In those 3 seconds, during which Agnes was looking at the stroller and the young mother was looking at Agnes, the man in the grey jacket bent down, took the handle of Agnes's suitcase in his left hand and slid it out from between her feet. He put his own down in its place. He stood up, he walked away. The whole exchange took 12 seconds. Callie exhaled through her nose. "Son of a stroller lady?" James said. "Working with him. Has to be. Get the wide shot. What direction did he go?" Trent tapped. The camera changed. The grey-jacketed man walked into the frame of a hallway camera, then into another. He walked east, down the concourse. He did not look back. "Terminal C," Trent said. "The overflow gates. He's still in the airport somewhere." Callie stood up. She looked at Agnes. Then she looked at James, and something in her face softened. "Ma'am," she said, turning back, "I need to ask you to please stay put for just a few more minutes. You are not under arrest. You are going to catch your flight. Do you understand?" "Yes," Agnes whispered. "You have done nothing wrong. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Agent Corbett is going to sit right here with you." James almost objected. He wanted to be the one to walk that concourse with Duke. But Callie was already moving, already on her radio, already pulling Trent behind her. She looked back at him one time before the curtain fell closed, and her eyes said, "You watch this woman like she was your own mother, or you and I are going to have a conversation later." He nodded. She was gone. James sat down in the plastic chair. Duke lay down across his boots without being told, the way he always did when a wait began. Agnes looked at him. Her hands were still folded in her lap. Her eyes had gone a little pink. "So it was not mine," she said. "No, ma'am. Somebody put those things in a bag that was not mine." "Yes, ma'am. Somebody switched your bag out with a bag that looked just like yours. The one you have here, in this room right now, is not your bag. It just looks like it." Agnes leaned forward slowly. She put her small hand on the leather handle of the suitcase on the table, and she turned it over in her fingers. She let out a small sound like a laugh that was not a laugh. "My husband bought me my suitcase for our 30th anniversary," she said. "Real leather. He said, 'Aggie, you're going to use this to see the world.' And I said, 'Harold, the farthest I go is the church basement.' But he saved for it. 6 months. He was a Marine. Then he was a lineman for the electric company for 41 years. Yes, ma'am. He put a little brass tag on the handle. It has our initials scratched into it, AW and HW, and a plus sign between them. He did it with a nail one night on the kitchen table." Her fingers moved along the handle of the suitcase in front of her. There was no brass tag. There was no scratch. She looked up at James, and her chin trembled. "Whoever took my bag," she whispered, "took my Harold's picture with it." James swallowed. He looked at the suitcase, and at her small hand, and at the empty place on the handle where 30 years of marriage should have been. "We're going to get it back, ma'am. You don't have to promise that. We're going to get it back." Callie's voice came through the radio on James's shoulder 11 minutes later. "Suspect stopped at gate C-17, boarding a flight to Houston. Cooperative, gray jacket, brown suitcase. And, James, the tag is right here on the handle. Brass, initialed, just where she said it would be." James let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. 10-4, he said. "Bring the suitcase back." Agnes was watching him. "They found him?" "They found him, ma'am. And they found your bag, your Harold's bag." She closed her eyes. 2 tears slid down her cheeks and disappeared into the collar of her cardigan. She did not make a sound. She wiped her face with the back of her hand like a woman who had been wiping her own tears for a very long time. "How long till my plane?" James checked his watch. 21 minutes to boarding, 29 to push. "You're going to make it." She nodded. Then she opened her eyes and looked at him. "What was in the bag?" she asked quietly. "The one they thought was mine. What was in it?" James hesitated. There were 40 answers to that question, all of them technically true, and none of them the answer she was asking. He said the most honest one. "Ma'am, it's something that would have destroyed the rest of your life if we had not gotten to the bottom of it in time." She nodded slowly, as if that were somehow the answer she had expected. "My husband used to tell me," she said, "that God does not send troubles. He does not send angels for. He never told me the angels sometimes had fur." James looked down at Duke. Duke's ears flicked forward at the sound of his own praise, though he could not have known the words. He was very good at reading the tone of a voice. "He's a good dog," James said quietly. "Yes," Agnes said. "He knocked me down and he saved my whole life at the same time. I would like to shake his paw, if that's not a strange thing to ask." "That's not a strange thing to ask, ma'am." James snapped his fingers softly. Duke rose. James pointed at Agnes and gave the tiniest gesture with his hand. Duke walked over. He sat in front of her. He offered his paw the way he had been taught, the way he did at community events for children in schools. His pink tongue was very slightly showing between his teeth. Agnes took his paw in her small hand. She held it for a long time. Then she leaned forward and, without any warning, kissed the top of his head between his ears. Duke did not move. His tail thumped once against the floor. James turned his face away. The curtain moved. Callie stepped back in, and she was carrying a suitcase in her hand. Brown leather, worn at the corners, with a small brass tag on the handle. She set it on the table gently, like a person setting down a wounded thing. She looked at Agnes. "Ma'am, is this yours?" Agnes reached out with both hands and turned the tag over. The scratched initials caught the light. She let out a small sound that broke something in James's chest and put it back together in the same second. "Yes," she whispered. "This is mine. This is my Harold's. We'll unzip it if you don't mind, just to make sure everything is where it should be, and then we'll walk you to your gate ourselves. Please." Callie opened the suitcase. Everything was exactly where Agnes had described. The pink blanket, the white dress with the yellow flowers, the photograph of Harold on the dock with the stringer of bass, the pill bottle, the moss-colored cardigan. Agnes lifted the photograph out and held it against her chest with both hands. Her breath came out shaky. "Thank you," she said, and it was not clear who she was saying it to. Callie looked at James. Her jaw was tight in a way that had nothing to do with Agnes. "Corridor," she said. Then, more softly to Agnes, "1 minute, ma'am." James followed her out. They stood in the corridor near a coffee cart that had been abandoned by whoever ran it. Callie kept her voice low. "He gave up a name." "The courier?" He panicked. He thought we were TSA, and he thought if he talked fast enough, we'd cut him a deal. He gave us a name and a place. "What place?" "Baggage handling. He gave us a baggage handler." James felt the floor shift a little under his boots. "Meaning?" "Meaning there are more than 3 packages moving through this terminal today, James. Meaning that man was not smuggling a suitcase across the country. He was moving one pickup out of a chain. Somebody put those packages in that decoy bag inside the airport. Somebody who works here." "When?" "This morning, before he sat down next to your grandmother." James's jaw worked. "How much bigger is this?" "I don't know yet, but I know he isn't the only one on the concourse today. He mentioned Atlanta." "Atlanta?" James felt his blood cool by a full degree. "Her flight." He didn't say her flight. He said Atlanta. Could be any of a dozen flights. "Callie," he sat next to her because she was flying to Atlanta. He knew, or somebody who told him where to sit knew. Callie was silent. "So there might be another one," James said. "There might be another passenger on that same flight carrying a bag she doesn't know she's carrying." "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." James rubbed the back of his neck with one hand. He looked back at the curtain. Behind it, Agnes was sitting with her husband's photograph pressed against her cardigan. "How long till boarding?" 16 minutes. "Get me on that concourse, every bag, every passenger, and nobody says a word to her. That's the plan." "And Callie, if we don't find it in 16 minutes? Callie looked at him for a long time. "Then we hold the flight," she said, "and I take the phone call." James walked back through the curtain. Agnes had finally set the photograph down on the table beside her. She was straightening the pink blanket with her small hands, folding it with a care that had nothing to do with tidiness and everything to do with needing something for her hands to do. "Ma'am," James said, "I'm going to walk you to your gate now. Duke and I are going to walk with you the whole way. Is something else wrong?" "No, ma'am. We just want to make sure you get on that plane." She looked at him for a long moment. Her pale blue eyes were older than they had been an hour ago, and also younger somehow, the way a person's eyes get after a great fear has passed through them and taken something out with it. "You're not telling me everything," she said. James did not answer right away. "You have kind eyes, mister," Agnes said, "but you're not telling me everything." James took a breath. He knelt down on one knee so that his face was level with hers. Duke sat beside him without being told. "Ma'am, I need you to trust me. I promise you that everything I am doing right now is for your good and for the good of a lot of other people. I need you to walk with me to gate B11 and get on that plane and go meet your granddaughter. Can you do that?" She looked at him. Then she nodded. Yes. Thank you, Mum. He stood. He picked up her suitcase, her real one, the one with the brass tag, and slung her small purse over his shoulder. He offered her his arm. She took it. They walked out into the concourse. Agnes was moving slowly, not because of her fall, though her knee had begun to ache, because she felt eyes on her. She could feel them from every direction, the teenagers with the phones, the families waiting at gates, the businessmen with their briefcases who looked at her and looked away too quickly. She kept her head high anyway. Harold had taught her how to do that. Marine wife, he had said once, was the third hardest job in the world after mother and God. James walked at her elbow. Duke walked at James's other side, ears up, eyes scanning the concourse without moving his head. To anyone watching, it looked like a K9 officer had made a small mistake and was now personally escorting a widow to her gate. To Callie and Trent, working the concourse 300 feet in either direction, it was a moving observation post. Callie was scanning departure boards. Trent was 2 gates back with a portable X-ray unit and 3 other officers pulling anyone whose boarding pass said Atlanta into a quick screen. 2 other Belgian Malinois had been called out of the crew room and were working in a slow pattern around the seating areas. Agnes did not know any of this. She only knew that a young man had gotten close to her because she was going to see her granddaughter, and that a dog and a police officer had somehow understood in a matter of seconds that the whole world had tipped, and that they were now bringing it back level again with their own hands. They reached gate B11 with 11 minutes to spare. The gate agent looked up. Her face was expertly neutral. She had received a call 2 minutes ago from her supervisor telling her that under no circumstances was she to close the door on the Atlanta flight until Agent Callie Reeves personally cleared it. "Mrs. Whitfield," the gate agent said gently, "we have your seat. You're in the front row. Let me get you a hot cup of coffee while we wait to board." Agnes almost cried at that, but she did not. She had used up her tears for the day. She sat down on the seat the gate agent guided her to and let her hands rest on her lap. James stood over her. He looked out at the concourse. His radio crackled quietly against his ear. "Nothing," Trent said, "bag by bag, every passenger, every single one of them clean. Keep looking. There are 28 of them on that flight. We have done 28, all clean." James's jaw set. "Then look at the bags they are not carrying." Silence on the radio. "Say again?" "The strollers, the wheelchairs, the car seats, the garment bags. Anything nobody is watching." Silence. Then Callie's voice. "Copy that." James looked down at Agnes. She was watching a small child a few gates down. The child was maybe 2 years old, in a red coat, holding on to her mother's finger with one small hand and pointing with the other at an airplane through the window. Agnes smiled the smallest smile. It was the smile of a woman remembering a moment 35 years old. "Ma'am," James said, "do you mind if I sit down beside you for a minute?" "Please." He sat. Duke lay down between his boots. "Ma'am, I want to ask you something, and I don't want you to think it is a strange question. After today, sir, I don't think any question is strange," he almost smiled. "When you were sitting at that other gate, before the man in the grey jacket sat down, was there anybody near you before that? Somebody who maybe brushed past you, or knelt down to tie a shoe, or asked you a question that did not quite make sense?" Agnes thought about it. Her forehead pinched. "There was a woman," she said, "just before the man in the grey jacket. She sat down on the bench. She had a little girl with her, maybe 5 years old. The little girl asked me if I was going to see a baby." "She asked you that?" "She asked me if I was going to see a baby because she saw the pink blanket sticking out of the corner of my bag. It had come a little bit unzipped. I remember I said, 'Yes, honey, I'm going to see my new granddaughter.' And I asked her if she had a little sister, and she said no, but her mama said she was going to. And her mama laughed and pulled her onto her lap and put her chin on the top of her head. It was a sweet moment. It cheered me up. My hands had been shaking on that bench. James was very still. "Ma'am, how long was the woman sitting there before the man in the grey jacket came?" Agnes thought. "Not long. Maybe 5 minutes. She got up when he sat down. She smiled at me and told me to have a beautiful trip. She walked that way, toward that big yellow sign." James stood up. He unclipped his radio. Callie, I need you to pull that footage again. Gate B9. 5 minutes before the man in the grey jacket. A woman with a little girl in a stroller, under 6 years old. The woman is white, brown hair, average height. She's carrying a large diaper bag. Callie's voice came back after a beat. "Already have it up. Confirming. Woman and child left the bench about 90 seconds before the man arrived. She walked eastbound. She entered the Terminal C bathroom at 7:19. She has not come out." James felt his heart drop. "She was the drop," he said. "She left the packages in the decoy bag under the bench and left. The bag was sitting there empty when the man in the grey jacket sat down. He put the packages in the decoy bag when Agnes was not looking. Then he did the switch." "Meaning she has more packages," Callie said, "for the next drop." "Meaning she's still in the terminal. I'm sending 2 units to that bathroom now." James stood up. Agnes was watching him with a look he could not read. "Ma'am, I need to step away for 2 minutes. Duke is going to stay right here with you. He'll sit on the floor at your feet. He is not going to leave you. You are safe. Do you understand?" "Yes." "When they call your boarding group, you do not move without an officer, all right? You wait for me or you wait for Agent Reeves, even if the door starts to close." "All right." James looked at Duke. He tapped his hand once against Agnes's shoulder. Duke moved himself so that his body was against her feet. He put his chin on her white sneaker and closed his eyes halfway, the way he did when he was watching without seeming to watch. James walked away fast, not running, never run in a terminal, but fast. The Terminal C bathroom door swung shut behind him with the slow hydraulic hiss of an airport door. There were 4 other officers in the corridor. Callie was inside. Trent was blocking the far exit. A female officer named Marisol Reyes was inside as well. Marisol came out. Her face was tight. "She's not in there. Diaper bag in the trash. The child's toys inside. No packages, no woman. Kid? No child either, and this is where it gets interesting." Marisol held up an evidence bag. Inside it was a small pink jacket, folded neatly. Beside it, a child-sized wig. Brown, curly, cut to shoulder length. Inside another bag, 2 folded women's tops, 1 blue, 1 white. James stared at it. "They changed clothes," Marisol said. "The woman and the child, different colors. Wig off the little one. Straight to another gate, looking like different people." "How long?" 10 minutes ago, at most." Callie stepped out. "James, I've got the whole terminal locked. Nobody is boarding anything until we sweep. How many flights hold?" 6. Nashville, Dallas, Houston, Chicago, Boston, Atlanta. Atlanta. Atlanta boards in 9 minutes. James felt the seconds sitting on his chest. "Give me Duke on the concourse, now." He walked back down toward B11. His stride ate the tile. Passengers looked up as he passed. A father tugged his kid closer to his leg. James did not slow down. He rounded the corner, and there was Agnes, sitting exactly where he had left her. Duke's head came up before James had even entered his line of sight. His tail thumped once against the tile. James unclipped the leash and gave a soft command in the back of his throat. Duke rose. He shook once, all the way from his shoulders to his hips, and then he looked up at James and waited. "Mom," James said quietly to Agnes, "1 more minute. I promise you." Agnes nodded. James walked Duke slowly down the length of the seating area. There were maybe 40 people at Gate B11 now. Some standing, some sitting, some staring at their phones, and some staring out at the plane on the tarmac. He walked past each of them at a steady pace. Duke moved his nose. He worked. His ears twitched. Nothing. James walked back the other way. He walked past two women who looked like sisters. He walked past a man with a briefcase. He walked past a young couple with matching backpacks. Duke lifted his nose toward the backpacks, tested, moved on. Nothing. James felt the seconds stack. Then Duke stopped. He was standing beside an empty seat. On the seat was a small backpack, purple, glittery, sized for a child. Sitting next to it was an older woman, 60s. Silver hair like Agnes's, cut a little shorter, grey blazer, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, a paperback novel in her lap. She looked up at James over the top of the glasses with a mild, pleasant curiosity. "May I help you, officer?" Duke was still. He was pointing, not at her, at the backpack. "Ma'am," James said quietly, "is this bag yours?" She glanced down. A puzzled expression crossed her face. "No, no, my granddaughter had that. She's over there with her father." She waved vaguely toward the window. "She's going to be so cross when she comes back and finds it gone." James looked. There was a man near the window holding a little girl on his shoulders. The child was pointing at a plane. She had strawberry blonde hair in 2 braids. She was maybe 4. "That's your granddaughter?" James asked. "Yes, Ellie. She insisted on carrying that thing herself. I told her at some point Grandma has to hold it for her, and she said no. And then she saw the plane and ran to her father, left it right where you're looking." James did not take his eyes off the woman. He did not raise his voice. "Ma'am, can you tell me where you're flying today?" "Atlanta. Family reunion at my brother's place." "With your granddaughter?" "With my son and my granddaughter, yes." James's radio crackled softly. He heard Callie's voice, urgent, in his earpiece. James, we have the woman on camera, from the bathroom. She reappeared in a red blazer and glasses and walked directly toward gate B11. She sat down and picked up a paperback. James did not move a muscle. He looked at the woman in the grey blazer. She looked back at him over her reading glasses. Her smile was warm and grandmotherly. "Is something wrong, officer?" "Ma'am," he said very quietly, "please stand up slowly and step away from that seat." Her smile did not change, but her eyes did. Just a flicker. Just enough. She stood up. She was fast. She dropped the paperback. She dropped the reading glasses. She swung a hand toward the child's backpack. Duke was faster. He did not bite. He was trained not to bite unless commanded. He moved between her hand and the backpack in a single fluid motion, his body wedging her off balance. James caught her arm in the same second and had her against the row of seats with her wrist behind her back before the paperback had finished hitting the floor. On your knees, ma'am. Hands on your head." The whole gate went silent. 100 phones came out. Somewhere a child started crying. Marisol appeared at James's shoulder. She took the woman's other arm. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent." The man by the window turned around with the little girl still on his shoulders. His face went white. He set the child down slowly. He turned toward the concourse and started to walk quickly away. Trent stepped in front of him. The little girl started crying. A woman near her gasped and reached for her, and then hesitated. Marisol was already there. She knelt down. She put her arm around the little girl gently. Sweetheart, I need you to come with me. Your grandma isn't your grandma today, but we're going to take care of you." The little girl did not understand. She only knew that everyone around her had become strange. Her lip trembled. Marisol lifted her. James picked up the child-sized backpack with a gloved hand. He carried it to a metal table that Callie was already setting up in the corridor. He unzipped it. Inside were 4 more packages, sealed the same way, same weight, same shape. Callie looked at James. 6 kilos minimum between the 2 bags. Somebody was moving 12 to 15 kilos through this terminal in one shot. "Somebody bigger than a courier and a fake grandma," James said. "Somebody a lot bigger." James looked back at Agnes. She was still sitting in the same seat. She was watching him. She had one hand pressed against her mouth. He walked over and sat down beside her. "Mom, it's over. You are going to get on that plane in 6 minutes." Agnes was staring at him. "That woman," she whispered. "That woman looked like me." "I know, ma'am. They picked her because she looked like me." James was quiet. "They picked me," Agnes said, and her voice was very soft, "because I looked like her." James did not answer that. He did not need to. It sat between them, heavy and true, and there was nothing to add. Then his radio crackled again. It was Callie, and she sounded like a woman who had realized something she did not want to have realized. James, meet me back at the alcove, right now." He looked at Agnes. "1 more minute, ma'am. 1 more. You go," she said. "I'll be here. I'll count the seconds." He signaled a young officer to stand near Agnes, and he walked fast down the concourse to the little curtained alcove. Callie was already there. She had a phone pressed to her ear, and her other hand raised to hold him quiet. She listened for another 20 seconds, then she lowered the phone. "James," she said, "the man in the grey jacket, the woman with the wig, the fake grandma, they are all in the system. Different names, different arrests, different states. So they're pros. They all worked for the same handler in the same distribution ring, for the same organization out of Louisiana. And this ring has been operating out of Memphis International for at least 8 months. We just did not know that this terminal was in play. We thought they were coming through Nashville." James rubbed his forehead. "Callie, what are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that if it had not been for one dog and one small woman sitting on the wrong bench today, we would still not have known this ring was moving product through our airport. This is a big case, James. I mean, it is a big case. Federal, DEA, every alphabet you can think of. Because of Duke, and because of that woman in there. If she had gotten on that plane with those packages in her real bag, even by accident, even not knowing, she would have gotten off that plane in Atlanta, and someone would have been waiting for her. Someone with a car and a story and a knife in their pocket if they needed one. That's how these rings clean up loose ends." James went cold. So they would not have just used her for the drop. They would have used her, and then they would have cleaned her up. That's what they do. She's exactly the kind of woman nobody would have looked for. James felt his hands close into fists and open again without his permission. "Get her on that plane, Callie. That's why I called you back here. I need you to fly with her." "What?" "To Atlanta, on this flight. Somebody was waiting for the packages to arrive. That somebody does not know the drop got hit. If we let this flight land with an empty seat, they know something went wrong. If we let it land with Agnes Whitfield on it, alone, they might still know, or they might not. I don't want to take that chance. I want you on that plane." James stared at her. "Callie, my dog. Duke flies with you. This is a K9 escort now. I'm authorizing it. The paperwork will chase us later. There is a car and a team waiting at Atlanta arrivals to move her through and get her to her daughter's house without any interference. I want you at her elbow from this seat to that front porch." James took a slow breath. He thought about his shift ending in 3 hours. He thought about the dinner he had been planning to reheat. He thought about the fact that his father had been dead exactly 9 years next Tuesday, and that his father had died with a needle in his arm in the back seat of a car in a parking lot behind a gas station in Jackson. He thought about a small woman in a cardigan with a photograph of her Marine husband pressed against her chest. "Okay," he said, "get me a seat. Already have it, front row, aisle, Duke at your feet." James nodded. He turned to leave. "James," he turned back. "That woman is one of the reasons we get up in the morning." He did not answer. He walked back down the concourse. Agnes was still sitting in the same seat, watching a plane push back from the gate opposite. The child in the red coat was gone. So were her parents. James lowered himself into the seat beside her. "Ma'am, would it be all right if Duke and I traveled with you to Atlanta today?" She turned to him slowly. Her eyes were wide. "You'd do that?" "It would be my pleasure, ma'am. Just as an escort, just to make sure you get to your daughter's front door with no more surprises." She looked at him for a long moment. "I don't have any money to pay for tickets, mister." "There's no ticket, ma'am. The airport buys them. Consider it an apology." She let out a shaky laugh. It was the first real laugh he had heard from her all day. "Well, all right then, as long as your friend down there gets a window seat." Duke's tail thumped against the tile. The boarding call came. First class, then priority. Agnes was in the first group. James stood, offered his arm again. She took it. He carried her suitcase for her. She kept her free hand on Duke's shoulder the whole way down the jetway. The flight attendant at the door widened her eyes at the dog, then smiled quickly, professionally. "Welcome aboard, ma'am. Officer, straight to the front." Agnes had never sat in the front of a plane before. She said so, out loud, softly, as she settled into the wide leather seat by the window. James settled Duke on the floor between his boots and Agnes's white sneakers. Duke rested his chin on the back of his front paw and closed his eyes halfway. Agnes reached up to touch the leather of the seat. "Harold would have liked this," she said. "He always wanted to fly first class. He never did. He said it was for people who had never had to work for a plane." She laughed her small laugh again. "He would have liked this a lot." James smiled at that, though he did not say anything. The plane pushed back. Agnes looked out the window as the terminal moved past. She did not close her eyes. She did not sleep. She held her purse in her lap with both hands, like a woman going to see something she had been waiting a very long time to see. Somewhere in the second half of the flight, she turned to him. "You said Duke's name was Duke," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Was he named after somebody?" James hesitated. Then he told her, "He was named after my father." "Was your daddy a police officer too?" "No, ma'am. My father worked construction. He was a good man for most of his life. He got hurt on a job when I was 14, and they put him on painkillers, and he never came back off them. He died in the back of a car in a parking lot in Jackson, Mississippi, when I was 22. Alone. There wasn't anybody with him." Agnes was very quiet. "His name was Duke," she said. It was not a question. His name was Duke. She reached across the armrest and put her small, cool hand on top of his large, warm one. She did not squeeze. She just left it there. She looked out the window. "He would be very proud of you, mister." James did not trust himself to speak for a minute. When he did, his voice was slightly rougher than he had meant it to be. "That's kind of you to say, ma'am." They did not talk again for a while. Below them, the land rolled from green to brown to green again. Somewhere over Georgia, Agnes fell asleep. Her small silver head tilted against the window. Her hand slipped off his and settled into her lap. James looked at her for a long time. Then he looked down at Duke, who had opened one eye at the change in the woman's breathing and closed it again when he saw that she was safe. Below them, the runway of Atlanta rose up to meet the wheels. Sarah Whitfield Grady had been standing at baggage claim carousel 4 for 40 minutes. She was 38 years old. She had her mother's small hands and her father's straight shoulders. She was wearing jeans and a nursing top, and she had spit up on one of them. She had left the baby in the car with her husband, who had come off his night shift and driven to the airport in his coveralls without changing. Ruby was asleep in the car seat. She would not have made it through baggage claim. Sarah had been checking her phone every 3 minutes. She'd called her mother's phone once and gotten voicemail. She'd called the airline twice and been told the flight was delayed, and then that it was delayed longer, and then finally that it had landed. Then she had waited. Now the passengers from her mother's flight were coming through in a slow trickle, and her mother was not among them. She wrapped both arms around herself. She did not know what she would do if her mother did not come. She did not know what she would tell Ruby someday when Ruby was old enough to ask, about the day her grandmother was supposed to come, and did not. Then Sarah saw her. Agnes was walking through the automatic doors of the arrival gate. She was small and silver-haired, and she was on the arm of a tall man in a police uniform. And beside them, on a short leash, was a Belgian Malinois, with his ears up and his eyes forward. Sarah put her hand over her mouth. Agnes saw her. Her small face broke open. She let go of the officer's arm. She started to walk faster. Then she was running in her white, double-knotted sneakers, and she was crying. Sarah met her halfway across the terminal. She had not seen her mother in 7 years. She had been the one to walk away. It had been over a stupid fight about a Christmas that neither of them could remember the details of anymore. She had let the silence grow because she was proud and because she was tired and because her father had died, and it had been too hard to reach across the space left by his absence. She had picked up the phone 9 days ago because a nurse had put her newborn in her arms, and she had opened her mouth, and the word that had come out was Mama. Not for the baby, for herself. Now she was in her mother's arms in an airport in Atlanta, and her mother was smaller than she remembered, and her mother's hair smelled like the same shampoo it had smelled like when Sarah was a little girl, and her mother was whispering something into her hair that she could not quite catch. "I'm sorry, Mama. Hush now. I'm sorry. Hush, you're here. You're here. I'm here." James stood 20 feet away with Duke at his side. He looked at the two women holding onto each other. He looked at the tile floor. He looked away. When Sarah finally straightened up and wiped her face with the back of her hand, she saw him for the first time. "Who?" "This is James," Agnes said, still crying and still smiling. "This is James and this is his Duke. They flew all the way here with me. There was some trouble at the airport, but there isn't trouble anymore, and your mama is here." Sarah stared at James. "What kind of trouble?" "Ma'am," James said quietly, "your mother is a hero of the United States federal government today. If you have 5 minutes when we get her home, I'd like to tell you the whole story." Sarah looked at him a long time. Then she looked at her mother. Then she looked at the dog. "Come on," she said, and her voice was thick. "Come on, all of you. Ruby is in the car, and I want her to meet her grandmother before she wakes up hungry." The car was in the short-term lot on the second level. Sarah's husband was leaning against the driver's door with his arms folded. His name was Marcus, and he was tall and had a beard that needed a trim, and his eyes went first to his wife and then to Agnes and then to James and Duke, and he pushed himself off the door and walked over without a word and put both his arms around his mother-in-law and lifted her a full inch off the ground. Agnes squeaked. "Mama Whitfield," Marcus said into her hair, "it is real good to finally meet you. Put me down, son." He put her down. He was smiling. He looked at James. "Officer." "Marcus." "Everything all right? Everything is all right now?" Marcus nodded slowly. He seemed to understand that there was a lot in that answer that would come later. He turned to the car. "Ruby's still asleep. She was about to lose it, but I sang to her, and Sarah always says my singing is bad enough to knock a baby out." Sarah laughed. She was still wiping her eyes. She opened the back door. Agnes leaned in. Ruby was 9 days old. She was in a car seat that was too big for her. Her face was small and round and slightly wrinkled, and she was wearing a onesie with a strawberry embroidered on the chest. Her eyes were closed. Her tiny lips were making small movements as she dreamed. Agnes made a small sound. She reached in. She unbuckled the car seat straps with fingers that had done this before 40 years ago with a different baby, in a different car, in a different city, when a different husband was standing behind her, waiting to lift the seat carrier out. She picked Ruby up. Ruby weighed almost nothing. Agnes held her against her chest and closed her eyes. The car seat carrier could wait. The luggage could wait. The airport could wait. The whole loud humming world of things that had happened that morning could wait. Agnes rocked her granddaughter slowly. She was standing in a parking garage in Atlanta with a police officer and a Belgian Malinois, and her daughter and her son-in-law all watching her, and she did not see any of them. She only saw the small face against her collarbone, and she was whispering something very softly in a voice that was too low for anyone else to hear. Sarah wiped her face again. James took a step back and turned toward Duke. Duke was sitting quietly by the rear tire. James put his hand on Duke's head. Duke leaned into it. "Officer Corbett," Sarah said quietly. James turned back. "Would you and your dog come to dinner with us tonight?" "Ma'am, that's very kind, but you don't need us tonight. Tonight is for you. I want you at my table tonight." James looked at Agnes. Agnes was still swaying slightly with Ruby against her chest. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth was making the shapes of the same small words over and over. "Ma'am," James said softly, "I'd be honored." The dinner was at Sarah's house in a quiet neighborhood on the east side. It was a small house with a wooden porch and a swing on the porch and a lemon tree in the front yard that was too young to have made any lemons yet. Marcus grilled chicken. Sarah made a green salad. Agnes held Ruby on the porch swing and did not put her down for 2 hours. James called Callie twice from the porch to check on the situation back in Memphis. Twice she picked up on the first ring. The first call was 2 hours in. Callie's voice was tired and jubilant at once. "We got the handler, James, the one the courier gave up. He was picking up product from the ramp workers this morning at 4 in the morning and thought he had cleared the whole run. We picked him up in a rental car in the long-term lot with 3 phones and a duffel bag on the passenger seat. He is not talking, but we do not need him to. We have got the ramp worker, we have got the 2 couriers, we have got the fake grandma, we have got the man in the grey jacket, and we have got the 7-year-old girl who was being used as a prop. And family services is with her right now, and her real mother is on her way from Little Rock." James closed his eyes on the porch swing. "Her real mother is coming? They took the girl from her mother 2 years ago. The organization did. Kept her clean, kept her fed, kept her alive, and used her at airports because a woman with a little girl gets a smile from everyone in a room. Her mother has been looking for her every day for 2 years. James did not trust his own voice for a moment. He said, "Good, good. The DEA is turning cartwheels, James. This is one of the biggest ring dismantlements in the region in 3 years. And the reason it is happening tonight is that a Belgian Malinois knocked down a 73-year-old grandmother in an airport. Yeah, I want to put in a commendation for you. I already put in one for Duke. Don't put one in for me. Put one in for her." "For Agnes?" "For Agnes. She could have gotten on that plane. She could have gotten off in Atlanta with a bag she did not know she was carrying, and the ring would have had her. She stayed calm. She told us about the woman with the little girl. She told us about the man in the grey jacket. She helped us break the whole thing open, put the commendation in for her." Callie was quiet for a moment. "I'll write it up tonight, James." He ended the call. He stood on the porch for a minute in the darkness before he went back in. The second call was 3 days later, back in Memphis. Callie had walked into his office in the K9 unit and set a manila folder on his desk without a word. Inside the folder was a picture, a grainy still from an airport camera, blown up. It was of a man in a suit standing at gate B11 in Atlanta, watching passengers deplane. He was looking at every face as they came off. When Agnes had walked off the flight on James's arm, and the officer's tall shape and the dog's alert body had come into view alongside her, the man in the suit had turned around and walked calmly back into the terminal and disappeared into an employee door. "That's him," Callie said. "The other end, the pickup." He walked straight from that door into the parking garage, got into a black SUV, and drove out. "You have a plate." "We have him. His name is Christopher Vega. He is mid-level in the organization. He runs the Atlanta side of the corridor. He did not know we had eyes on him at the airport that day because the whole operation was moving so fast. We tracked him from the SUV. He led us to 2 warehouses and a stash house. So the whole corridor is open. The whole corridor is open. This ring is done, James. The people we did not get today, we are getting this week. We are getting them because of 1 woman and 1 dog. She left the folder on his desk. James looked at the picture for a long time. He thought about a small woman on a porch swing rocking a baby against her collarbone. 2 weeks after the flight, Agnes came home to her small house outside of Memphis. Sarah drove her. Ruby was in the car seat in the back, awake, gurgling at the world. Marcus had stayed in Atlanta with work. Sarah had cried at the airport goodbye like she was 6 years old, and her mother was leaving her at the school gate. Agnes had told her gently that Ruby needed a home that was her own home, and that she herself needed to go water her tomatoes. James was waiting on the porch when they pulled up. He had known they were coming. He had left a small pot of yellow chrysanthemums by the front door. Duke was sitting beside him on the porch, ears up, tail sweeping the wooden boards. Sarah got out. Agnes got out. Ruby came out in Sarah's arms. Duke's whole body went into a slow, controlled wag. He did not move from the porch because he had not been given permission, but every muscle in him wanted to. Agnes climbed the porch steps, holding Sarah's arm on one side. She looked at Duke. She looked at James. "Well," she said, "look who's here." "Mom," James said. He knelt down on one knee. Duke walked to Agnes. He sat in front of her. He offered her his paw. She took it. She held it for a long time. Then she leaned down and, without any warning, kissed the top of his head between his ears, the way she had at the airport. Duke's tail thumped once against the porch. James stood up. He looked at Sarah, then at Agnes. "Ma'am, I brought you something." He handed her a small box. It was wrapped in plain brown paper. She looked at him, puzzled, and opened it. Inside was a small brass tag. New, etched clean and deep. It had the initials AW and DW and a small plus sign between them. Agnes looked up. "A little something for the handle," James said, "in case you ever fly again, and so you'll know." "Know what?" "That we're paying it forward, ma'am." She held the tag in her palm. She turned it over. Her eyes were wet. "DW?" "Duke Whitfield, if it's all right with you. He answers to it." She laughed. It was a bright, small laugh, and it surprised her. She pressed the tag to her chest. "Well," she said, "come in, both of you. I have a pound cake in the freezer and a jar of pickles I've been afraid to open alone. Sarah, get the baby out of that seat. Officer, tie your friend to the porch rail if you have to, or don't. Let him come in the house. It's my house." Duke did not need to be told twice. He walked into the small living room and immediately lay down on the rug in front of the fireplace, as if he had lived there for years. Ruby cooed at him from Sarah's arms and reached one small hand toward him. Duke let her open and close her fingers against the top of his nose. Agnes stood in the doorway of her own house and looked at all of them. She thought for a moment of the polished tile of Memphis International, and of the cold floor under her palm, and of the sound of her own voice screaming that she had not done anything. She thought of the man in the grey jacket, and of the fake grandmother in the grey blazer, and of the 7-year-old girl who had been used as a prop, and was now, God willing, sleeping in her mother's real arms tonight. She thought of Harold, and of the picture in the wooden frame, and of the way he had scratched their initials into a piece of brass with a nail on their kitchen table on a summer night 43 years ago. She looked at the new tag in her palm, and at the officer standing in her living room, and at the dog on her rug, and at her daughter holding her granddaughter. She thought about how a person's whole life can turn on the smallest thing, on a woman with a stroller catching a wheel on the corner of a suitcase, on a Marine buying his wife a brown leather bag for their 30th anniversary, on a dog with the right nose at the right moment, on a police officer who chose to look at a woman's eyes instead of at a package on a table. She thought about her Harold and about how he had told her once that God does not send troubles, he does not send angels for. She had not believed him at the time. She sat down in her own armchair. Sarah put the baby into her arms. Ruby made a small, sleepy sound and fitted herself against Agnes's collarbone. Duke stretched out at Agnes's feet with his chin on her white sneaker. James took the pound cake out of the freezer and put it on the counter to soften. If you've come this far with us, do us a small favor before you go. Leave a comment down below and tell us where in the world you were listening from and whether you have ever met someone who felt like a gift you did not know you had asked for. Hit that like button so more people can find this story. And subscribe to the channel because there are more stories like this one coming, and we would love to have you along for every one of them. Agnes Whitfield closed her eyes in her armchair. Somewhere between one breath and the next, she was rocking her granddaughter, and she was standing on the polished tile of Memphis International with a palm against a cold floor. And she was young, and she was old, and she was safe, and she was loved. The floor was not cold anymore. It never would be again.